That's super powerful.
I mean, look
This is the card you want to run 3 of. Forget the common.
Forget it.
Forget
Forget it, guys.
common.
Forget it. Just toss it out.
Yeah,
Okay.
literally.
You want, first of all, let's talk about the art. Fantastic.
Yes.
For any Black Myth Wukong lovers out there, we know this card is hot. Sun Wukong, all right? You want this in your card.
Tell them.
You want this in your deck. You want 3 of this card, because break it down for me, Jan.
Well,
Okay, 3, 2, 1. Jan?
Colin.
Welcome back, everyone, into our Diving into Altered series. Today, we're going to be taking a look at another starter deck that we're very, very excited to share with you. I know Jan's personal favorite, or one of his personal favorites. He's got a lot of those. We're going to be taking a look at a Bravos starter deck.
Yeah, I do find myself playing quite a few different factions, but Bravos is easily top 2. In contrast, it's quite different from Ysmir, which is very spell-based and kind of control-based. This is very minion-based, a lot of boosts, more mid-range, getting a lot of stuff on the board. So totally different play style.
Contrasting to also the Muna deck, which is, a lot of value, that anchoring, kind of maintaining your board presence. Also some similarities with the boost too, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of boosting.
Muna, kind of you're setting yourself up and you might be gaining boost over time.
Right.
Whereas with Bravos, you're gaining a lot of that boost as you play the cards.
Yeah, so you kind of get the results a little bit earlier, but maybe the minions don't get necessarily as big. But that's just the way that the 3 different decks kind of play relative to each other. So why don't we break down, the cards?
Yeah. So let's look at the hero first, Kojo and Booda.
Yep.
So these guys they're good. They're decent. If you're the first player, you create a 2/2/2 companion token in your companion expedition, obviously, and you just know what you're getting. Every other turn, you can expect to have that, so you have a little bit more power and presence on the board, so you can kind of structure your turns in a sense that you're going to have something to work with on the board. So one turn you might want to control the board a little bit if you can, and then the next turn you can kind of have a more powerful, explosive turn.
So is that typically how you'd be playing a Kojo in Booda deck? Like you're almost trying to hold the line on the turns that you don't have Booda, and then when you have Booda, it's like you kind of go hot and heavy.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, obviously kind of depends on what you're working with. Your opponent might have anchors and stuff on the board, but when Booda comes out, that kind of gives you an opportunity to try and take both expeditions, right? You've already got a body on the board on one side. You can play into the other side, maybe provide some boosts there, but yeah, it kind of gives you a bit of a game plan in terms of trying to play out your future turns.
I think it's above average hero power. I don't think it's amazing. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's about average, to be honest. Yeah. So, if you kind of break it down, every 2 turns you're getting a 2/2/2, which kind of averages out to every turn you're getting a 1/1/1. Similar to Muna, every turn you're getting a 1/1/1 boost on the first character you play.
Deck as well.
Ordis, yeah, you get a 1/1/1 token. So that's kind of like the baseline average. With Muna, you get to control that a little bit in the sense that you can choose what character you're putting on, and you might be actually getting more value out of that, because if you put it on an anchored minion, that character now has an extra boost for 2 turns versus 1 turn. So in a sense, Muna hero power is giving you more value than Kojo here.
Yeah, and you lack a little bit of flexibility too, because it's only companion side.
Exactly.
I feel like it's a very strong, as you mentioned, like one of Kojo's play styles is also mid-range, right? So 2/2 on your first turn, if you're the first player, like that's strong.
That's really powerful, yes.
Because I think that's almost, you're winning at least one side of the expedition, because they're either competing with your Booda, or they're placing it on the other side. So it's in which case you get.
Essentially, if you're the first player with Kojo, you're almost guaranteed to advance at least one side, because either you can support your Booda and you're going to move forward
Yeah.
there, or depending on what your opponent has, you might be able to take both sides. So it definitely gives you a strong start, which you can kind of consider this deck, tempo oriented, and like you said, kind of more mid range. So as you get into more mana, you can kind of utilize that mana with higher power characters.
Perfect. So let's see how the rest of the deck plays with Kojo in Buddha.
All right. Number one is probably one of the crowd favorites as well.
The alt art for this must look amazing.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with alt arts is you don't have the borders, so that in itself is going to make it look a lot better. But yeah, I think this is a really great card, art-wise.
Yeah.
It's a flying squirrel.
Flying squirrel with a bit of a hooded kind of garb on it, and I think this is a good card. It's even with the mana cost. 1 mana for 1/1/1, or 3 from the reserve for 3/3/3.
Yep.
I don't think you can hate that, right?
No, yeah, you're getting your straight value. This card and a lot of cards in Bravos actually will play well into some of the other heroes, or one hero in particular, where when you're gaining a boost, it activates the hero. But in this deck, it's just like you said, it's kind of straight value for what you're paying. And what I do in particular like about this card is that it's flexible in the sense that it starts off as a 1-drop, and then as the game progresses, you now have a bigger minion in a 3-drop, where a 1-drop is not as impactful.
And to your point, this Bravos deck being very tempo oriented, this is exactly a tempo play, right? You get the 1-drop, you have something on the board for 1 mana. Next turn, drop the 3-drop, get more stage presence.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
I think it's great. And as Jan mentioned, this is going to have more synergies with another Bravos hero. And I think, as time progresses, I think we're going to take a deeper dive, especially, as the seasons release and the new cards come, kind of seeing how certain cards relate to certain heroes in their respective decks. And, stay tuned for that.
Yeah, and it's great that they do fit multiple deck styles as well, right? It's not just like this guy fits only into this deck.
Yeah.
And there's also the rare. So he does get a bit of a value gain in the extra boost coming out of reserve. And this is kind of what we're talking about. The art looks a lot better when you remove those borders. So I'm tempted just to play the rare because it looks so much better.
Yeah, it looks better. It's, you get a 25% increase in the amount of boosts you get, right? Or 33%, because you're getting 1 more. And I think it looks like a fantastic card.
Yeah.
I wish they, even lowering the reserve mana cost and keeping the effect the same might.
Yeah, 1, 2 for, yeah.
Might have made it a little bit stronger, but it's still a great card.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. Isun Boshi.
Yeah.
So this card obviously is a little bit understated. I personally never like seeing zeros, let alone double zeros. Bit of a liability, and kind of limits the way that you can play this card. Essentially, if you're not playing this into a water expedition, it's not doing anything for you. Where this card gains value is the quick effect. So you can discard it from reserve, and the next character you play will get a 1/1/1 boost. So in terms of value, it's actually pretty good because you're paying 1 mana up front for the 2 in water, but then later on you're getting an extra 1/1/1 worth of stats for a 1 mana that you would have already paid earlier, but at that point you're just discarding it. So pretty good value, and that boost we'll see a bit later on can be quite impactful on the right characters. So
yeah, I think for this deck though, a little underwhelming.
Yeah.
Like I think it's good that you can discard it to get that 1/1/1 boost, but you're not playing this on a turn 1, right? Because turn 1 you need all 3 to advance.
Yep.
And then maybe once you claim an expedition or the next one gets revealed, but then you're coming up against Lady of the Lakes. You're coming up against Frog Princes, right? Like where they're gonna give Isun Boshi a hard time. So
yeah. So not as flexible, but it's an okay card.
Yeah.
All right, Bravos Tracer. This is a very aggressive card, right? So you're getting more stats in terms of value for what you're paying, but he's going to gain fleeting right away, so you're not going to be able to replay him. But up front, it's just super aggressive.
Yeah, 2 mana for more stats than what you're playing, what it costs is straight value.
Yeah,
Can't go wrong with that. Super aggressive, 2-drop 2. So, if you time this correct, right, and you play this even on a turn that you don't have Buddha out, you're outpacing your opponent, right? And you're making them choose because you don't necessarily need Bravos Tracer to come back out on the next turn if Buddha's coming out. That's the way I see it.
yeah. And the way that I kind of look at this card is you need other support in your deck to be able to draw into more resources.
Right.
Because this kind of puts you at a card disadvantage. You're playing it once and then
Yeah.
it goes away.
Yeah.
So you need to be able to balance that out. So in the right deck, I think it works, but that's just kind of one thing to consider.
Yep.
And then the rare. The rare, super aggressive.
That's
I think,
very
I think
aggressive.
it's amazing in this deck. Like,
I mean, a 2-drop for 4/3/4
yep.
like that. Wow.
Imagine, Buddha on a turn 1. You don't even need to play all your 3 mana, but if this is the only kind of like playable card you have in your hand, you've taken probably both expeditions, or even if you have an extra 1 mana to play in Buddha's expedition, like, yeah,
That's tough.
this will help you edge out and kind of get ahead of your opponent. But again, you got to be able to balance it out.
For sure, right? Like definitely, initial upfront aggro, it might kind of hurt you towards the end game.
Yeah.
To your point,
If you
like
run
this,
out of steam.
yeah, like this deck is really kind of coming hot and heavy, mid-range tempo, and if your opponent's job is really to kind of survive the onslaught, right? Until
Yeah.
you run out of steam. If you run out of steam.
Yeah, so aggro decks that play a lot of lower cost characters, you do need some sort of a way to redraw, replenish your resources so that you don't
Yeah.
run out of steam. Bravos Pathfinder. 2 mana, 0/3/3. So just a reallocation of stats. You're getting pretty much, the value you would expect. Instead of a 2/2/2, it's 0/3/3, right? I think it's a great card in the right situation. Not going to work in every situation, but for the right situation, it's kind of almost like the card we just looked at in Tracer, right? Overstated in certain areas for the mana. So if you're playing this on a mountain ocean expedition for 2 mana, that's great.
Yeah, I like situational for sure. Kind of relating to your point before, right, with Bravo Tracer and not running out of steam, right? Like the worst thing that I can imagine is pulling Bravos Pathfinder, and that's the card, and you're running low on cards, and you're on, a part where you have to get forced,
Yeah.
and this card does nothing for you. So, sure, in the right situation, in any situation, any card can be phenomenal. I think generally speaking, it's not too great.
Yeah, it's an average card. It's an average card, I would say. Haven Trainee, a 2/3/1/1. Out of reserve, it gains 2 boosts. Again, reallocation of stats. This one is a little bit understated for the mana you're paying. So I would say it's, again, it just average in that sense. I kind of like the other ones a little bit more because you're getting the full value for your mana. Here you're losing a little bit of value.
Yeah, and trainee, what can you expect, right? Pretty much the intern of Bravos.
Yep.
Trying to do its best, but maybe in a different deck it could be a little bit stronger.
Yeah, but you need the bodies, right? Again, so we're still only
on
on
2
2
mana.
mana,
I know.
right?
I know.
All right, 3 mana finally, and this is a really good one, I think. Bravos doesn't have a lot of removal tools or a lot of kind of disruption tools, and this is a body plus that, so you're paying 2 mana for the 2/2/2, and then you're playing an extra 1 mana for the sabotage. right?
Yeah.
And that sabotage could come in really clutch in a deck that you otherwise don't really have that as a tool. So
Yeah.
this is a pretty great card for this deck, I would say.
And it gives you options too, right? Like playing from hand, sabotage, playing from reserve, gain boost.
Right.
I think that's options for any deck is always a good thing. And to your point, like removal, not overly common in a Bravos deck, so it's welcomed.
Yep.
Yep.
Yep. So I like this card. I do like this card. Haven Warrior. Another kind of reallocation of stats. This one, you are
Slightly more value.
yes, more value. Yeah, this is, I really like this card, especially in this deck. It's pretty aggressive. It's pretty tempo. You know, you're getting, like you said,
Yeah.
over the value of what you're paying. So it's a good card, much better than Haven Training.
For sure, for sure. Because even 2 on rock, right, that can get you something.
Yeah.
And by the time you're playing a 3 mana card consistently, likely you're probably out of the first zone, right? Where, you know, you don't need to win all the categories. Maybe it's, you know, only forest and rock, or, you know, it'd be fantastic if you were on a forest and water
Yeah.
zone.
Yeah.
And unlike other just pure flavor text cards, again, slightly more value. And I personally love value, so I like this card a lot.
Yeah. I like it too. I like it too. The rare, don't like it as much. You know, the thing is, outside of this deck, like this is not really a rare you can easily slot into a deck because you're just kind of gaining a few stats there, which you're getting value, but you know, the common is already doing that. So
Yeah.
if you're gonna run Haven Warrior in any other deck, you're probably going for the common.
And I feel like you know, the kind of upgrades to this rare card kind of compete a little bit, because sure, now you're 3 mana 4/4/4 with the rock being increased from 2 to 4, but in reserve, you're almost making a choice. Do I play it again for 3 mana 4/4/4, or do I forego half of the benefits that was granted to this card to then give a boot? Like, you know, I feel like
Yeah,
it's just a
that's-
little bit bipolar in that sense.
That's a great point because honestly, like you probably wouldn't want to discard this out of reserve. You're gonna want to play it because
Yeah.
it's a big body, right? So, yeah, I don't think it justifies the rare slot.
Yeah, it's, you know, the rare allocation of upgrades is not good.
Yeah. Okay. Sun Wukong.
Sun Wukong.
So, we're at the common. The common is it's decent, right? Slight. So on the slight undervalue for playing it out of both, actually, right?
Yep.
Slight undervalue. So he's okay. I think let's just jump straight to the rare.
Yeah.
That's super powerful.
I mean, look,
This is the card you want to run 3 of.
you
Forget the
want to
common.
forget it.
Forget
Forget it,
the
guys.
common.
Forget it. Just toss it out.
Yeah,
Okay.
literally.
You want, first of all, let's talk about the art. Fantastic.
Yes.
For any Black Myth Wukong lovers out there, we know this card is hot. Sun Wukong, all right? You want this in your card.
Tell him.
You want this in your deck. You want 3 of this card, because break it down for me, Jan.
Well, this card loses fleeting
Loses fleeting.
coming out of reserve.
That's
So
insane.
unless your opponent can sabotage this or remove it, which they're going to spend resources and they're going to probably prioritize spending resources, but you play it out of reserve, loses fleeting, it goes back to reserve. You can just cycle this over and over
So
until
you're constantly getting a, 4 mana for 4/6/4.
right? And going back to the tracer, this kind of helps you counterbalance that card advantage loss
Yeah.
with a huge gain. It's not an infinite gain, obviously, because it can be removed, but
And 4/6/4, like, you're going to be hard pressed taking that out and winning. And like, I've seen you play your games and I've seen you cycle this card. Like, I feel like whenever you see Sun Wukong rare in the expedition in your reserve, that's when I think also mentally you're applying pressure to your opponent, because they're like, oh man, this guy's going to keep on coming out over and
Yep.
over and over again. And value. I love value.
yeah, you just you play this out of reserve every turn that you can, and you're revealing less information about your hand. You're letting your hand kind of reaccumulate resources for once he's gone. So, yeah, tons of value. Love this card. This card is probably, in my opinion, the best card in this whole deck.
Best card in the deck. Okay. Kappa.
Kappa.
A lot of overstated cards, in the Bravos
Yeah.
deck. A lot of like even just plain vanilla. Like obviously this same sentiment, right? Like you're getting a little bit more value, a little bit higher cost.
Yeah.
It's a good card.
Interesting looking dude.
Yeah.
Looks cool.
Yeah. Kind of got like sensei vibes, like a turtle master.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out what his hat is. Is that like a little bowl or something? What is that?
I kind of interpret that as like his brain or something.
Is that his brain?
He's a spirit.
Interesting.
Or she, but looks like a...
Yeah, they look cool though. They look cool.
Yeah. Cool.
Kappa. Just a, average card. It's you need to have your higher drop. So, this is your higher mana turn 4 drop. Even on turn 2 with 4 mana, like if you got a Buddha on the board, you don't mind dropping this into your other expedition, right? Atlas. So this card's interesting because on paper, when you add up the stats, gigantic means you're getting those stats in both expeditions. So you're paying 5 mana for 3/3/3 plus 3/3/3. So you're getting 6/6/6 worth of stats for 5 mana, but it's being split, right? So
and on a turn with Buddha,
it's true, it's going to add up on one side, but you're kind of splitting your stats, so it's going to be situational, right?
Yeah.
Like if your opponent's playing heavily just into one expedition, playing this card is not going to help you. You're going to rather just contest with higher stats in one character. However, going back to Isun Boshi, the next card you play gains 1 boost. If you can use that on this guy, now you're getting 4/4/4 on each side. You're getting 8 mana essentially worth of stats. That can be a huge play.
huge. Or one might say gigantic.
Well played. So yeah, if you can give this guy boosts, I think a really powerful card. But again, just a little more situational, and you're not going to be able to just kind of drop it like every other card we've pretty much seen.
Yeah, and I feel like it's a little bit counterintuitive to the deck because I feel like Bravos is just so heavy in like I feel the 4 mana and under cards that when you start kind of coming into this 5+ mana, it's like, is this really the game you want to play?
I think it gives you options.
Gives you options, but definitely not an auto include.
Yeah, I would agree with that statement.
Yeah.
All right, Dorothy Gale.
Okay.
Do you remember
Yeah.
where this is coming from?
Cross faction.
Yeah, Ysmir.
Or was it you? Yeah, Dorothy. Yeah, she's a witch.
Yes. So, again, not too many removal options in Bravos, so it's a cool card to have, although I feel like it's harder to play in this kind of deck, right? You're trying to be aggressive, so if you're playing with an opponent that doesn't really have a worthy target to remove, you're kind of just holding this for the right moment, and you're not getting that much stats out of it, right? Especially for 5 mana. It's a tool. It's a nice tool to have. I just don't think it fits into many Bravos decks.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit out of place. So I agree. Shenlong.
I think that's an awesome card for one. Looks great, right? On paper, looks amazing.
Yeah.
9/9/9 for 6 mana.
This is your option for the end game.
Right. And it's nice that it has tough 1, which means that removing it is going to be harder because your opponent needs to pay 1 more to remove that. And that counts for characters that would remove. So say if your opponent wanted to play a Dorothy Gale to remove it, because they can target a character, they're going to have to actually pay 6 mana because of that 1 tough. So it's nice to have on a card like this, because when your opponent sees this, like this is a high target for removal.
For sure, and at the end of the day, it's a 6-drop for 9/9/9. Granted, this is the rare version.
The rare, yeah. The regular one's 8/8/8.
Like that's a lot of value, right.
Yeah.
888 for Shenlong. I think that's very on theme too. But this is a great kind of end game closer, right? You just want to come smash your opponent, maybe even that overtime deathmatch scenario, right? Right, dropping a Shenlong, definitely cool, and a dragon. I know you like dragons.
I
so
do love dragons, and that artwork is pretty cool. I
Very
really
cool.
like the
Very
backdrop with the thunder and him just in the foreground. I think he looks amazing.
Yeah.
All right, moving into a permanent
Yeah.
spindle. Obviously coming out of Muna. It's the Muna bastard.
Yeah, this is where the little spindle harvesters are.
Yeah, yeah. So it's an okay card, especially in this deck because it's a tempo deck, and playing this, you're going to lose a lot of tempo. So obviously it's going to provide some protection for your cards in them having tough 2, so they're going to be harder to remove. So it's a bit of an investment up front. But to get this on the board is going to be a little bit hard, although I could see a turn where maybe you're at 5 mana, you have Buddha out, and you have something like a Tracer in your hand, where you can kind of, gain an overstated minion on the board and play this as a permanent. But again, you're definitely going to lose tempo playing this, but in the right situation against the right deck, maybe against Ysmir, that's going to be playing a lot of removal, you would want to prioritize and get this on the board. So
Yeah. I think it's a little bit out of place. Like, it definitely makes sense in a Muna deck because you're investing so much on your characters, whereas for Bravos, it's kind of like you want to get it out, do your damage, right? I could see this protecting Sun Wukong too, right? If someone does straight removal.
Yep. Although it won't protect it out of reserve. So cards in reserve are not controlled. So it only protects controlled characters. So once you actually play it on the board. So you could still get sabotaged. So it's not like 100% protection. But I agree that it's a bit out of place. And if you look at the greater card pool, there's a lot better landmarks that you would want to play in this deck that are going to kind of support the archetype of being very tempo and aggro and mid-range. Yeah. So
you can definitely swap this one out.
Yep. And this is a rare card, so it's going to take up a rare slot in your deck as well. Physical Training. This is actually the rare, which adds 1 cost of mana, so it's a 3 mana out of hand, but it adds a card draw. And the card draw is really nice. Obviously, the 3 boosts is what it is. You're paying 3 mana for 3 boosts, so you're really kind of banking on that card draw making an impact. But at 3 mana, like it's going to be a bit tougher to get out than the 2 mana version. Yeah. Right? Like, imagine trying to play this on Atlas, you got to be at 8 mana. Yeah. Which would be a really good play. Right. So
you kind of need the stars to align to kind of set that one up for sure, right? I mean, the good thing is card draw, which to your earlier point, right, like running out of steam could potentially be an issue. So you get your boost and you get a card draw. I think it's decent.
Yeah, it's a decent. It is a good card. Yeah. And then this is the common. So just easier to get out, right?
Easier to get out.
Obviously, you're still paying 3 mana out of reserve, but up front, going to be a lot easier to play and kind of helps your mana curve, right? Like play it earlier for 2 mana and then you're gaining mana and you can play into it for 3. So I think it fits the deck. Yeah. And the last card, Intimidation, the 1 removal spell that you're given. And I think it's a great one.
It's a cute card.
It is a cute card.
Oh my goodness, look at him. He's a little tiny yak.
He's intimidated.
He is very intimidated. It's probably Atlas, man. What are you doing? Scaring the little, maybe not Atlas, but definitely someone scary.
Yeah, maybe somebody jacked. Could be the bouncer, or could be the Haven warrior.
Bully. As a Muna lover, this is a bully. Bullying the little yak animal.
Yeah, so at first glance, I think, myself included, a lot of people didn't really like this card as much because it sends the card back to the owner's hand. However, it only costs 2 mana, and if your opponent paid 4 mana to put something on the board, and you're paying 2 mana to put it back in their hand, and now you're advancing on that expedition, I think that's really powerful.
You get a bit of value, and using that against a Muna character, right? Losing all those boosts.
Yeah, exactly.
Anchored.
Especially, imagine you target a Sneezer Shroom that has hung around and he's gained a couple boosts.
He's like a fungal growth now at this point.
Yeah. bounce it back to the hand, and your opponent, you know, obviously they get to replay it, but they lose a lot of value. So
Overall,
that's the deck.
very fun deck. Makes me want to play Bravos, and I'll be honest, I haven't taken a look at Bravos too much other than playing against the Bravos. A lot of fun. I think if everyone could let us know what you think about Bravos deck, what you're playing, what changes you've made, join our Discord, subscribe, and you know, keep following along for our deck reviews.
Yeah, and you guys will catch me playing Bravos, so I'll show you the true power of the deck.
See ya.
See you guys.